First Newsline.
Hello there, very good evening. Welcome to another edition of Newsline. We're coming to you live and direct from our News First studios here in Colombo. Sri Lanka is looking at moving into the digital age. Of course, the digital age came about quite some time ago, but now there are renewed efforts to further digitize Sri Lanka's economy, even the day-to-day lifestyle practices of all Sri Lankans, especially in the context of this economic crisis. And a digital economy, a digital lifestyle, more digitalization is being looked at by Sri Lankan authorities as a way and mean of reducing corruption, which is one of the biggest issues that we're facing right now, and also making our systems more efficient, moving into the future. Developed country by 2048, I believe that's what we're looking at. To discuss these matters and much more, we've got with us today a cybersecurity expert, Asela Waidyalankara. Very good evening, Asela. Welcome to the show.
Good evening, and thank you for having me.
After quite some time.
A little too long.
Asela, but it's good that you're here right now, because while all of this is very good, very great, very welcome change for all Sri Lankans, there is, however, some concern. And this stems from, incidents that have been reported in the past as well, but the incidents came back into the limelight with the recent hack on a government server, where emails for the past 2.5 months or so and data that came along with it were just simply lost, and no one knew where it went. These kind of incidents really bring to question as to if Sri Lanka is ready to move into the digital age. There's no doubt we should, but we shouldn't go into the digital age or into this massive, large-scale digitization with the risk of everything that we worked for, all the systems that were put in place, to be just washed away by the click of a button.
That's a very interesting take you've got, and I agree. First of all, I'll just give a background of where Sri Lanka is right now in terms of digital. We are at a very interesting stage, because when COVID came along and we went into this self-isolation and we started working from home and all of these things, we actually increased the pace of digitization in this country. And if you take it now, the ownership of smartphones, for example, has crossed 50% of the entire population, and it's quite high. Even in urban areas, it's close to 60. So one can hypothesize that within the next couple of years, that figure will go up to 70%. So there's an organic shift towards digital. We've seen the banks and other financial institutions move their offerings to a solely app-based offering. And they're actually actively right now discouraging people to come to the bank, either used one of their cash deposit machines, or in fact now they're actively encouraging people to use their apps for transfers. So in one hand, Shalan, there is a growth, and year on year, central bank will back these data up. Year on year, the digital payments, those transactions, they're increasing.
Right.
And what we need right now is, concurrently, there is a expectation by people that government systems also will give them the same experience that they get from the private sector or global companies that they're dealing with. For example, on a daily basis, I'm sure we deal with social media. Now that experience is quite smooth. You don't get glitches or you don't get anything like that. In fact, they spend a copious amount of time making sure that those systems are working perfectly and fine, so that your experience is seamless. Similar to some of the banks also, they make sure that their digital experience is smooth.
Some more than the others.
Some more than the others. Telcos is another area where they've shown very big maturity. Both all the telco players have moved into digital, and there's a wide variety of offerings that they give to their customers based on digital. So organically, the customer expectation has grown, or rather the citizens' expectation has grown. Then we come to government. Now government, in contrast, has been a laggard when it comes to adopting digitization. That's the first problem. Secondly, when they do, we see a gap in the governance of IT. And I think that's important, because the general view is, and the point I think where we stumble is, we look at this in terms of, okay, this is an IT problem. The technical guys will solve this. And we don't look at it as a policy that we have to take, because other countries have moved beyond that. If you look at India, which is a very good example of how they merged the entire country's strategy now around digital. That was very evident when the president visited India. The president was talking about physical connectivity. We will give you a bridge, the ferry and so on. The Indian side said, you know what, our UPI payments, connect it to your central bank so that when Indians come, they can spend in Indian rupees in Sri Lanka. So that is the kind of maturity that they are fostering in their digital space. But we do not see it that way. And this is probably the lack of policy focus that we need to do. And we still want to treat this as an IT guy's problem or a technical problem, and we don't have that policy maturity. I think this problem stems from that, this mismanagement of citizen information sometimes, mismanagement of government's own information. In this particular case, it was government emails, and surely the gov.lk email, Shalan, for a moment, can you imagine, you have a corporate network, Maharaja. There are a lot of emails that go back and forth, a lot of company sensitive information that you probably don't want outsiders to see, goes within that email system. Can you imagine if somebody comes and tells you, by the way, for the last 2 months, somebody's been reading all our emails? Shocking, right? This is exactly what has happened. That's the first problem. There's fancy words being thrown around as ransomware.
Ransomware, spyware.
Ransomware is very simple, and the way I explain it when I'm teaching is, imagine somebody has taken your data hostage and they want a ransom. Now, in a physical sense, it happens, somebody kidnaps someone close to you and they call you and say, you know what, give us $1 million, we'll release your, next of kin or child or whatever. This is the bad guys say, by the way, we have your data, you can't access it. We've, locked it in a special way called encryption. The key is with us. Pay us $1 million through Bitcoin or any crypto methodology, and we'll think about releasing it. So that's exactly what has happened here. But the concern is not that. The concern is that tells me the bad guys were in the systems much earlier. So what are we talking about? Sensitive government information, including the cabinet office. We know there's very country specific, very country sensitive information that is discussed at cabinet. And sometimes those discussions are not privy to anyone except the people who are in cabinet. Can you imagine for a moment to know that this is now in the hands of a third party, non-state or state actor? We don't know. That is a cause for concern. And this is why, we need to look at this from a different angle. I saw even today there's a commission of inquiry appointed by the technology ministry on this, and there's a complaint made to the CID. But I don't think that's the way we go about it. We must actually even raise this matter in parliament and actually look at even a parliamentary select committee, because that is the level we must take it at. Because no one really thought about this as a national security concern.
And also, Asela, would the conventional, justice system in this case, say for example, let's take your example, you said ransomware, you kidnap someone. The moment an incident like that happens, your usual course of action would be go file a complaint, the police will will locate the suspect, arrest the suspect, put him into courts, give him bail. The matter will take about 4 to 5 years if you're lucky, maybe a little bit more if it's just a normal case. Would that system really work in the case of ransomware, or this digital crimes as we call it?
That's an excellent question. When you look at cybercrime, now first of all, I'll give you a startling number. If you rank the GDPs of the entire countries of the world, and you rank cybercrime also as a country, cybercrime will be number 3, because it's America, China, and then cybercrime. 10.2 trillion, that's a T, not a B, not a million, not a billion, trillion US dollars. So just try to wrap your head around the number. That is the estimated loss globally from cybercrime. Cybercrime is considered a borderless crime. So for example, what Sri Lanka has done, and I'll give the answer from a legal point of view. Now, Sri Lanka is one of the few countries that has entered into what we call the Budapest Convention on Cybercrime. That was done way back in 2017. Right. We've actually, I believe last year, signed the optional protocol also, which includes ransomware. So we do have access. But I agree with you. When it comes to investing, now you said the physical crime. How do we go about investigating a physical crime? There is a crime scene. A crime scene tech will come. they will cordon off the area, they will gather evidence, they will photograph. If there's biological evidence, a JMO will come, examine that, and then that evidence will be collected and sent for analysis. Now in a digital space, ideally, when such a breach occurs, we follow the same process. The evidence should be contained. Ideally, what we say is plugged off the machine, so that that machine has all the evidence of how the intrusion took place, how the bad guy got in, did he use any special software.
He can't remove or erase a trace of him being there.
Because that breadcrumb is very important when you're doing the investigation. Generally what happens most of the time when organizations go through such situations is they are really, they really want to recover their data soon. They don't follow the forensics part of it. And therefore what we say, and most of the time in my career we've come across these situations where the forensic trail is lost. So that's something you need to look at, and there should be specialized trained people within law enforcement, Charlotte, who can do that. Now, do we have such a capacity? That is questionable. Then we talk about the
But we can't definitively say that we don't.
We can't definitely say we don't, but the capacity building is absolute essential. Because in the other part, now we know there are certain law enforcement arms who have got advanced digital forensics tools, but do we have a proper digital forensics lab that will do cybercrime analysis and so on and so forth? Now, why this is important is, I come back to your question. Once we collect the evidence, we process the evidence, then we can work with our global partners, we can work with Interpol, we can work with Europol and say, by the way guys, we've got this particular strand of malware or virus. Have you guys seen any similar signature? Then we can tie it definitely to a active cybercrime gang. And that's how you establish a fingerprint of, okay, this is being done by so and so. Of course, those guys might be in a Scandinavian country, or those guys might be in Russia. We don't know. But at least once you identify the group, then you can start building a case against that group, and you work with global partners, and therefore you can prosecute these guys.
And it's also protecting against future attacks.
Absolutely. And this is how you build investor confidence. This is how you build, we want to build a digital economy, and that's a key topic that's coming up later this year. If you want to build a digital economy, this process has to be very robust. So which is why I always encourage the digital evidence, the digital collection, the capacity building from law enforcement. Listen, they're doing a lot. They're overwhelmed. But really you need specialized people to do this, and the linkages to the global organizations to make sure you go after these guys beyond the geographical borders of the country.
But Asela, let's take a look at a few incidents that happened here in Sri Lanka. Now, this ransomware that recently infected government websites and deleted emails. One thing is we don't have a backup. I don't know how. I just can't wrap my head around that. I mean, even in my...
Do you have a backup?
Even in my laptop. The documents that are in my laptop are always on a pen drive. They're on a cloud because I'm scared that something might happen.
Why do you do that?
To protect the data.
Exactly.
So I just couldn't wrap my head around
so that means in a personal level, you have a backup strategy.
I have two backups. That's it.
That's the thing. You have a cloud backup and you have a USB backup.
Yes.
Now, in your limited technology experience...
And limited financials.
let's keep it limited technology experience. You have done far better than a government system where they say that they haven't got a backup. Despite having a dedicated government cloud, they call it Lanka Government Network, LGN, which taxpayer money has been spent, by the way, to build up that network, and that's not something...
And maintain that network.
And maintain that network.
Which is extremely costly.
With vendors, with agreements, and so on. And that's not done yesterday. That's been done incrementally, and listen, it's a good project. But the fact remains, why was the data backed up in that particular cloud? Why? What happened there? Where is the failure? Now, usually in cybersecurity, without complicating a lot, we have three pillars: people, process, and technology. When we try to identify what went wrong, it's one of the three that has gone wrong. So is it one of the three, or is there a possibility all three? It could be a combination, but at least one could fail.
Okay.
So here what I see is maybe the process has failed, maybe the people have failed. It's probably not the technology, because if you look at it, listen, Lanka LGN is decent in its infrastructure. So those two sections have failed somewhere, and I'm not blaming people here, because listen,
we still don't know all the facts.
We don't know all the facts,
and we don't know if we will know all the facts at any given time.
See, this is my concern. time and time again, we've had cybersecurity incidents. Now, if I go back to last year, there was something called LK domain breach, meaning the .lk, without being really technical, anything .lk, blah, 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 .lk, newsfirst.lk. That entire .lk domain was breached. And I remember, similarly, there was a press conference held and said, we are going to start an investigation. And that was the end of it. See, what we want is credible report coming out saying this is what we've done, a technical analysis, this is what we've identified, the fingerprint of this is leading, we strongly believe it's this particular cybercrime gang. This is the type of what any other country, this is what happens. So this is what we want to see, and we're not blaming anyone here, but this is what is expected, because then it creates trust for you to transact with the government with your data. See, what happens here is, and this is what people don't talk about, the more people hear about this, do you want to put your credit card information into a government site now? You'll be like, my God, they got hacked. Why should I put my information there? Do you want to give your biometrics to a government entity? You'll be like, my God, how is it safe? See, this is the trust deficit that they're creating. And this is irreparable when it comes to the digitization journey that we have to take.
Well, thought-provoking stuff that we're discussing here, Asela. We need to cross over to a short commercial break. We'll be back with more on the other side. Stay tuned. You're watching Newsline live.
News First, Newsline.
Train strike continues despite declaring railway service as essential. 84 striking workers warned with termination if they don't report to work. Train commuters severely inconvenienced. Body of a teenage boy who fell off a train roof moved to his residence. Gotabe returning to politics is a joke, says SLPP's SM Chandasena. Moratuwa University students in talks with UGC. President heads to Cuba, meets West Bengal Chief Minister in Dubai. China's Shiyan 6 research ship ready for an expedition in the Indian Ocean.
News First, Newsline.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsline Live. We're in discussion with Asela Waidyalankara, a cybersecurity expert, about Sri Lanka's journey into this massive cyber economy or digital economy, the digitization of Sri Lanka that is being looked as a solution to the multiple crises that we are facing right now. Asela, now, before the break, you raised concerns as to if Sri Lanka is really ready to do all of this, if we have the systems in place. But to the credit of the Sri Lankan government, whichever it would have been at the time, I think credit of the Sri Lankan state, the bureaucracy, the politicians, all of those included, we had a very successful program with the QR code system. An extremely successful program.
And I'll tell you why that worked. And I think you made an excellent point there, Charlotte. Why it worked was, first of all, it was a public-private partnership. It was one telco as well as one system integrator who worked on it. Second, there was political intent. Because of the external pressures coming in, there's intent to do the change. And there also, I must say, the governance was run by professionals because it was public-private partnership. That is the secret of his success.
So according to your knowledge, what was the contribution like? Government contribution, private contribution, what was it like? Was it funded by the government, run by the professionals? How did that work?
It's completely funded by the telco, as well as the development or the technical effort was given by the system integrator, the software development team. Then, of course, the infrastructure was given by the telco. So literally the running of the day-to-day operations was private sector done.
Right.
It was only troubleshooting, giving suggestions how the system might want to change and so on. That was sort of led by the ministry, under the minister.
Right.
So see, now that's the difference. When you lift the veil back, now you have a e-government system which actually worked, and to its credit, until it was sort of discontinued, let's put it that way, it was one of the most successful e-government systems to date, in my opinion.
In Sri Lanka?
In Sri Lanka. So that tells me actually e-gov will work. If there is a right intent, if there's political intensity, if there's political will, and you let the professionals run it. And I think this is again, the secret of it, the secret sauce was in the public-private partnership, where it was professional-led. The development teams, the troubleshooting, the looking at the code, the management, the reports, the dashboards, everything. And there was a lot that was happening. And I think, honestly, my opinion was, I was a little sad when it was discontinued, because
it was such a good system.
It was such a good system, and it gave extraordinary insight into the purchasing behavior of everyday Sri Lankans. Can you imagine if we were to actually purchase this system for an international vendor? It would have cost us millions of dollars. And here we are, had something that worked perfectly well. So I hope, honestly, that in some way or form that it will be brought back, because it was an excellent system, and it worked because it was done in such a way. And I think this is a good template for future e-government projects as well, where you let the private sector run it. It's led by the private sector, it's led by professionals, it's led by subject matter experts, and the policy direction, sort of the policy guidance, and that soft touch approach is given by the government.
But Asela, again, speaking about trust, and because we're looking at a public-private partnership into the NIC data, biometrics, to move that also into the digital age, where you probably wouldn't have to, the next time the cops stop you on the road, you wouldn't have to flash your ID card. They'd probably come in and take your fingerprint, and of course that seriously improves the system and the efficiency and the efficacy of all systems. But let's take a look at a few incidents that happened a little bit before that as well. The NMRA data scam. Now, I remember when this story came out, this was also just a few months or several months after the system was digitized, the procurement system was digitized because of COVID-19, and then we were also on the verge of facing a medicine shortage to having almost faced a medicine shortage at the time, and all of this data was just completely gone. And then in court, I mean, I believe the process is still in court, but in court, giving evidence, making submissions, one of the heads of the company that was managing this cloud said that this was not a mistake, this is not ransomware. One of our employees actually sat down in front of his computer for about 7 hours, clicking select, delete, select, delete. So if that is the level of security that really is there for public information, and to date nobody has really been held accountable. The case is still ongoing, and that is partially the system that we have, the justice system, and the fallbacks in that. But isn't there really a need for a proper system to be first put in place before any of this continues into the point where we cannot return back or even salvage whatever we have left?
So I'll give a very broad answer for that. Some of these things can be done from technical controls. For example, a single person logging in, deleting specific data without somebody else confirming that, probably should have been a fail-safe built into that system. Just saying. That's a technical safeguard. Secondly, a junior engineer access to the entire database without supervision, that's a process failure. And of course a people failure also, because you would probably, any company generally wouldn't expose their junior engineers to a large customer's entire database. Probably it was a failure there. Then of course the people, how much are they trained, how much are they, the rigor of that. So like I mentioned, the 3 pillars of people, process and technology, augment that with some of the laws in the country. Now we have last year the Personal Data Protection Act that is slowly coming to life. I think President gazetted it, and we are just awaiting the data privacy watchdog to be appointed. Once that is done, the Data Privacy Act completely comes into operation. There was the Cybersecurity bill, which I came previously on the program to discuss a little bit about. That's also there. So we see a dual push. For example, in the financial sector, Central Bank in 2021 had laid resilient guidelines for the banks. So there's a huge set of obligations that banks have to undergo, including up to board level. And I think that should be a very good template, up to the board level, where the board has to be trained on cybersecurity. The board is held liable for cybersecurity breaches and failures. See, and I come back to the point I made. If we view this problem as an IT problem, then we are really not going to solve this. And I think that's where, when you even come about some of the NMRA or any other failures that we've had in public data, is because we view this problem as, it's an IT problem. It's not. Also, one thing, there were 3 entities that were looking after that data. One was the Health Ministry, one was the NMRA, and one was the private company concerned. None of them said, now, without getting too technical, we have an ISO standard for cybersecurity. It's called ISO 27001.
Right.
If in the spec, or if the ministry or the NMRA had said, by the way, chaps, 27001 is the rule of thumb, you have to be compliant to this, there should be regular audits, external people coming in and auditing your processes, looking how you go about doing your business, it would have worked well. So look, this is what I say, look at the private sector, because you can't have such a disjointed digital experience. No, private sector, listen, more or less you have a good experience. When it comes to government sector, it's not. It is because you don't take these measures. Because we are just obsessed with buying a box, like I say. You're buying a server, buying a firewall, buying something, and then we're done. That's not digitization. Digitization is a strategy. Digitization is a well thought out process that goes into your policies of what you want to do as a country.
And it's a journey that never ends.
Never ends. and you know, this is why when you look at the other countries, that's how they're suddenly integrating AI into their thinking. That's how they're integrating robotics into their digital journey. Because it's not done yesterday. And you know, people are talking about AI now. If you look at the countries that are leading in AI, and I'll finish off with that, that was a 10-year, 15-year journey where they kept on investing in R&D. If you look at China, if you look at US, these countries kept on investing. And now you see this explosion. Didn't happen overnight, but it happened incrementally over time. And now we're reaping the benefits of it. It's the same template we have to use.
Invest now to, well, enjoy later. Thank you very much, cybersecurity expert Asela Waidyalankara, for putting these very technical matters into simple words, because I believe communication is key when moving forward. I believe lack of communication in the past several decades, or maybe even since independence, has led to many issues here in Sri Lanka. So let's at least learn that lesson and then get that right. Thank you very much once again, Asela, for joining us on our program. Thank you very much to all our viewers for tuning in, as you always do. Until we meet again, take care and God bless.